Good afternoon, good evening, good morning to you, everyone out there. Thank you so much for joining us, whether you are live or tuning in later. Happy New Year to
Happy
everybody.
New Year.
Happy New Year. And if you don't remember us, my name is Teresa Castro,
And I am Ricardo Recinos.
and we have a special show for you today. So, with no further ado, we want to introduce our special friend, as always, Mr. Billy Joe Wright.
Hey, welcome back, everybody. Oh my gosh, I am so pumped for this school year as well as the guest that we have today. So, if I seem overly excited today, then please just know that you're in for something special. I first want to thank you, Ricardo and Teresa, for letting me buy you off somehow to continue doing this for us because it is so valuable to our HLPTA members, our community at large, as well as the people that you have been impacting throughout the state and now nationally. The work that you all are doing is being recognized. And as we talk about privately, that I want to say publicly, is that the work we do is about representation. And it's about bringing in our stories, no matter what they are, challenges, and about making sure that as adults we're seen, and as if we feel seen as adults, then our students are going to be seen. So I just want to thank you for continuing this. And then can I introduce our first guest?
Yes,
Yes,
please.
please do.
Okay, so I am so excited. The direction that the Hacienda de la Puente Unified School District is going with so many different programs. And this being my last year as the Hacienda de la Puente Teachers Association president, I could not ask for better partners in the leadership, including the person I'm about to introduce, who's only going to be here for a little bit, but this is Dr. Isaiah, Assistant Superintendent of Educational Services. Dr. Isaiah, welcome. Thank you. Hello.
Oh, Billy, what an introduction. Thank you for the invitation. I am delighted to be here. Any chance I can get to connect with our school community, our staff, students, parents, I'm all about it. So thank you.
Well, thank you for squeezing this in last minute because I know that Teresa and Ricardo had a great show already planned on culturally responsive teaching with a special guest. But knowing this is our first episode, I couldn't think of a better person to have initially on, and then we'd love to bring you back again for more. And I know that you're making time for us away from your other responsibilities, so I don't want to keep you too long, but just for our members and our community, could you tell us just a little bit, introduce yourself in terms of professional, personal, and then we'll really get deep on our next, the next time you're able to come.
Okay. So not too long, but let's see in a nutshell. This is my 30th year as an educator and so proud to do that work here in Hacienda La Puente. I love the district already. So many great things happening, and the focus is on the right things. So, the focus on equity and access and just doing what's best for kids and strengthening our work so that we can be the best we can be for our students. A little history about me. Let's see. I am an English learner. I was born in Mexico. I came to America when I was 4, and I just remember struggling as a newcomer because I didn't speak the language. I was in culture shock. Grew up in poverty, and because of incredible educators and mentors, I am here today, and I truly mean it. So I believe in the power of education. I believe in the impact that educators can make, and I believe in language, culture, lived experiences, race. All of that contributes to our strength. And when we welcome our students into our schools, we take that information and we use it to support their personal, academic, social, emotional growth in the classroom.
You know, I know that Ricardo and Teresa are getting the chills like I do. And when you watch some of our episodes back that we have done over time, we have often had tears on this program. We've had chills, we've had tears. Coming out of COVID, we've had people just being honest about what it was like going through it in their families, as well as a professional in public education. And when we've shared our stories, we've found a safe place that we can share, learn, and grow together to feel confident to then grow those seeds in our students. And so I can tell you that when you watch some of these past episodes, you're going to see why I mentioned just hearing you initially introduce yourself that I know we're all getting chills. So thank you so much for being here. And
Thank
if
you.
you would just stay 1 second longer and then we'll both leave in a little bit. But I know you and I talked about this episode and you were so supportive about this episode. And without any further ado, I want to bring on our next guest, Efraín Tovar. And hello, Efraín. And Efraín, when you in a minute unmute yourself, I'm going to just I'm going to let Teresa and Ricardo take over because they're the masters of this. I get to pop in and then go become an audience member participating. But as president, I want to thank you personally for the work that you do. I've watched the videos that you do, and I think when you include the students themselves talking about the impact that the things that you focus on, how it's impacted them and the confidence they tell it with, and then when you share why you do what you do and the impact of it, it encourages so many of our members, including me as a high school government teacher in our district. So I will be watching not as president. I will be watching as a teacher, as a biracial person who was raised in a Spanish-speaking household with my nana. And so I just want to thank you, Efraín, for creating opportunities for us like this. And I hope to meet you in person one day, maybe even in our district. Dr. Isaiah, thank you again for being here. Any last
My
comments,
pleasure.
Isaiah?
Oh gosh, last comments. This is an amazing topic. And I think, like I mentioned, educators in my life who valued who I was, who made me feel visible, and who um, didn't stop me from speaking my language, my home language. That's why I'm here today. And the focus and attention on this topic is so important. And I would be happy to come back and we can talk a little more about that. But have a great show.
Yay, we did it. We did it. We got her to commit. Yes. So thank you, Dr. Isaiah. Efraín, thank you for being here. Ricardo and Teresa, you're amazing. And we'll be watching. Thank you, everybody.
Bye.
Thank you so much. All right. So let's go on with our topic for today. Again, Efraín, thank you so much. We know that you are busy, 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 and constantly in demand. So for you to make time for us on this show, we truly, truly, truly appreciate it because this means so much to us personally as people, as students, as teachers, but also to our audience as well. So Efraín, thank you. I eternally grateful that you are here.
Gracias.
So everyone, this is our very first episode of this school year. So again, welcome back everybody. For whether you've already started, our district already started almost 2 weeks ago, right? Little less than that. And we have a few teachers, of course, who are not starting yet. They're about to get there. So have a great year, everybody. But this is such an important topic, and this is the start of our series called Embracing Diversity: Strategies for Culturally Inclusive Teaching. And we know we've heard culturally relevant teaching, so many different ways to talk about that. And so we're starting off with this great, great episode. Episode 1, Making Space for Native Languages in Newcomer Classrooms with Efraín Tovar. And so we are so thankful that he's here, and we are going to let him introduce himself in about a minute. but we're going to go ahead and continue on, and we'll get to know him a bit. So our purpose, we always start with our purpose, everybody. And this is our why. Examine the importance of embracing human diversity. So we're talking about students, we're talking about teachers, but we are talking about everyone, right? This is the whole point. This is the whole reason why we're here. And our objective for today is, what is culturally inclusive teaching? Why is it important? And how can it look in my classroom? So we're going to discuss the importance of native languages, especially in newcomer classrooms, with our expert, Efraín, today. So let's go ahead. All right, go ahead, Ricardo.
Yes, and I was scared because it looked like we lost Efrain for a second, but he's back. And we always like to start with this quote because it's very, very close to our hearts. If you talk to a man in a language he understands, that goes to his head. If you talk to him in his language, that goes to his heart. And I know Efrain, that's by Nelson Mandela. Efrain, you know my story because you heard it before, but I actually grew up in El Salvador and I escaped the civil war in the 80s and came to East Los Angeles. And I went to Garfield High School and didn't speak English at all. And I was I was given a placement test, but the placement test was given to me in English. And I did horrible. And all of a sudden, I'm in this remedial classes and I got lost in the system. No one cared that I knew what I knew. If you asked me in the right language, if you asked me my language, I could have shown you that I knew math, that I knew science, that I knew, all of these other subjects, right? I got lost until one day, this teacher by the name of Jaime Escalante came into my homeroom. And basically, he used to do this all the time. He came in and he took me out, gave me a math test in a language that I understood. And all of a sudden, I'm in trigonometry and math analysis, and it changed my life. And if we would have teachers like that or like you, it just, what a difference it makes for our students, right?
Yeah, so if those of you who are watching, if you don't know, that's Ricardo in the top left in the pink boots.
That's
right
me
there.
with the pink boots.
And, I always love to hear Ricardo's story because, that is why we're here, right? We want to be that teacher that makes sure that no one falls between the cracks. We want to be that teacher who makes the difference. Because if that teacher didn't come out and seek for Ricardo, he wouldn't be with us today. I don't know where he would be. And, my pictures are here too, obviously, because I share a similar story. I was also a language learner. And my first year of education, my teachers thought I was mute. They thought that I actually didn't speak at all. And when they talked to my mom was like, "What are you talking about? She talks so much at home." And it wasn't, I understood some English, but I just wasn't confident enough to speak at all. And I thought, I learned through, growing up that, it is important to honor people's languages. But after seeing Efraín speak, I just wish they gave me a chance to speak my language because unfortunately over time, I don't speak as fluently anymore. Even though English is my second language, I now feel like Filipino is my second language. I don't speak it very well anymore because I just, I started to lose it because I stopped speaking it in class, in life. And so that was why it's so extra important to me. But, more than us today, because we can't change the past. But for now, these are our kids. This is my daughter and my son, and this is Ricardo's daughter here. And this, as parents, we pray that we have teachers who do listen to who they are, whether it's language, so many things, right? So they're our reason personally, right? And then our own students as well. And Efrain, we're not even going to let you speak because we've been talking. I'm sorry. We're so excited about this topic, and we promise we'll give you a chance. And these are some of our teachers who've been guests in our show, and they are out there making a difference. So we thank them. And we don't have everyone on this graphic here, but so many teachers, making a difference to all these students who we have right here who need those special teachers who would
Those are
reach
our students.
out
Yes.
to them. Yes, definitely. Let's continue. So finally, your turn. Efraín, can you tell us a little bit about yourself? Just really casual today. So please
Yeah,
do.
absolutely. You know what? As I'm sitting here, as I'm reading some of the comments that our viewers are submitting, and as I'm listening to your why, I think everything that we do begins with our why, right? El por qué. Why am I here? What is my purpose in this life? What is my purpose as a parent? What is my purpose as a teacher, as an educator, as an advocate, as a ELD teacher? Too often, we as ELD teachers are left kind of in the corner and say, well, you guys take care of the ELs, right? You take care of those language learners. But in reality, when it comes down to it, your kids in your district are my students as well, right? Because we live in the state. And I think the vision that the state has set forth in terms of ensuring that all students have access and have opportunity to be able to become either bilingual, biliterate, or multilingual or multiliterate. And ultimately, that's the goal, right? And so here's my picture. This is my why. I became a teacher, not because I had great teachers. Yes, I did, but because of my first educational experience as a second language learner myself, right? As when I entered kindergarten. And so that experience was not a positive experience. And so I grew up in a community where it's primarily all Spanish. And so, that's the first language I connected with, right? That is the love language between me and my mother, me and my father, right? And so that was my identity. And I often share that our language, our names are tied to who we are. And we're tied to this identity, right? That started out in the womb, hearing my mother's, songs and hearing my mother's voice. That is what connected me to my mother. And from the early ages, my language was that that hook that allowed me to discover my world, that allowed me to connect with my mother and father. And so as a little kid, you love language, you communicate. And I think you, Teresa, you shared it, right? Speaking Tagalog, and you were connecting with your family. I can already see you as a little girl, just full of life and just passionate and using language. Then all of a sudden, something happens in our lives or in the lives of our second language learners or emerging bilinguals, that something happens where their identity is either shook up or is stripped or is reinforced, that their language and or their name is not as important. So let us change your name from Efrain to Ephraim or to Ephraim, right? Or let us, no, you're here to learn English. So therefore, only English, right? So, all of those experiences have shaped us to be who we are. And for those of you that haven't had those experiences, that's okay, because your experience, your story is your story. The question is, how can we as educators become innovative empathizers? Let me say that again, innovative empathizers, because really it's a future ready skill to be able to be empathetic, to be able to connect with all students, regardless of their background, regardless of their, you know, unique circumstances, right? I just started my 28th year in education. I've seen it all, experienced it all, right? But one of the things that has hold true all these 20 years is that connections matter, right? Today, I just finished my second day of teaching with students. And today, this week, and next week, all I'm worrying about is making sure that my students are seen, heard, and making sure that they feel connected, not only with me, but also with each other, right? So, already I've spent almost 2 hours, right, per period, because I'm a middle school teacher, 2 hours of just having students learn each other's names. And that takes time, but it's the foundational skills that we are establishing early on to ensure that we actually reach before we teach. And there's this term that I use called treaching. We must
Yes.
reach or treach. We must reach the hearts and connect with our students before we can actually begin teaching. Because if we start teaching without reaching, guess what? We're going to lose them, right? There's no empathy. There's no connection. And so, that's a little bit about my background in terms of why I'm here today as an advocate, as an educator, as an innovator, as someone that is passionate about equipping all teachers, regardless if you've been in education as long as I have or longer, or if you're a new teacher, that it's okay where you are. It uh, you know establishing your educational toolkit takes time. And so it's taken me many years to achieve and to be the type of teacher I've always wanted to become. So thank you for having me on to today's show. And if you're listening, feel free to ask questions, give me your thoughts, give me, your pensamientos, your thoughts on today's topic.
Wow, thank you, Efrain. Listening to you, every time I hear you speak, I get chills, and it touches my heart because of my story, but because you just put so eloquently the things that, Ricardo and I have been, talking about fighting for for years. And, we might not have the best words, but you put it so in such a way that is so heartfelt and so easy to understand. So I'm so excited for where the show is going to take us. We have a plan, but it never goes to plan, so it's okay. We're just going to go with it. But we love this video. And Ricardo, do we have time? Are we okay with
Efrain,
time?
are you okay with us playing the video, at least part of it, so we can
Yeah,
see it?
absolutely. Absolutely.
Yes, so I will go ahead and play it. Let me know if that sound plays, Teresa.
Mhm.
This is
Read
Efrain
me
and his
the
work.
entire sentence.
Today is Friday, May 12th.
Beautiful. Now, can you say it in Spanish?
Señor Tovar, hoy es viernes, mayo 12.
Language is tied to identity. You don't have to give up your identity of who you are in order to learn English. So, because we value the whole student, our newcomers are becoming confident learners. ¿Puedes decir en Zapoteco?
Voy a intentar.
I love that attitude. Here in Selma, we're very diverse, and we've been seeing an influx of newcomer students, ranging from anywhere from Yemen to Guatemala, India, and other countries. Typically, anywhere from 5 to 8 languages are represented in my classroom. And so that brings many challenges. It's really important for me to know what their heritage language is, which allows me to assess whether or not they're proficient in their primary language. What? How do we say what in Zapotec? Juan Li? How do we say what in Arabi?
He is very familiar with us. That's why we feel so confident here.
The whole purpose of allowing students to tap into their heritage language is for them to practice their
Sorry.
speaking skills. If you can't say it in your primary language, you'll have a difficulty saying it in your secondary language. I would tell them, do it again. Take 2, take 3. Say it again.
¿Cómo deletreas hoy?
If he asks us about English word, he say, Simran, what you say in Punjabi?
So part of language development is ensuring that our students have ample time and ample opportunities to speak. The goal is for them to be able to be proficient in both languages. Translanguaging, right? Being able to flow from one language to another or interchangeably using both languages.
Nanyo dijiste, y hablo español, and I learn English in Mr. Tovar class.
Class, are you ready?
Every student in my classroom has a home team. That's the team that they're with for the entire year. Students need to be able to learn how to collaborate. They all have a role. I'm really talented with technology, so I place those under the CTO position, the Chief Technology Officer. So rather than students coming to me, they actually go to the CTO first.
All right, so we want to watch the whole thing, but we know our time is limited with Efrain, so we're going to go on with our conversations, and Ricardo's going to share that link to that video, because Efrain, we shared that video with some of our teachers in our district, and they were just like me, like tears, because a lot of people share this story, and you don't know until you give them a voice to share it. So just watching that video, so many other teachers have come about and said, I have a similar story. I was one of those students. I wish I had the opportunity. And that same thing goes for me, because here I am wishing and longing for the language that I feel I have lost. And I feel like I wouldn't have if I was in that situation. Anyways, let's continue. So we're going to talk a little bit more about you, and then we're going to give you a chance to share as well. I know I get carried away. I'm so sorry. Efrain, we put some of your, if you want to talk about this slide a little bit and tell us a little bit about some
Oh,
of your.
we can just skip this slide.
I had a feeling he would do that because, like Ricardo, he's quite humble as well. But I didn't.
Uh,
I will skip it. But before we do, Ricardo, just wanted to know that he was the founder also over here. To please follow over here on Twitter, the California ELL chat and the California Newcomer Network, just to kind of be part of this community. So please feel free to follow him on Twitter and also these things here. So I know
I'll put that on the chat,
he
definitely.
was
yeah,
also
thank
the
you.
outstanding teacher of the year for Q, and he doesn't want us to mention it, but it was there. Sorry, we had.
Those videos are in there too. That's why we kind of skipped the video because we have more videos. But this is who he really is, a teacher at heart, right, Efrain? I think you used
Yes.
to teach college, right? Before you decided that wasn't where your heart was, right? You wanted to be
Well,
making
I started out, I'm going to date myself right here. I was I was a 22-year-old newbie when I started back in 1995. This is pretty, Common Core, right? For those of you that have been teaching a while. And I started out as a fourth grade bilingual teacher. And so I knew that I wanted to leverage my literacy skills and being able to empower second language learners and also to teach other students how to acquire, another language. And so I taught for 5 years, and then an opportunity opened up for where I actually started working in higher education, because really part of my why and part of my core is equity and access, right? Regardless. And so when I worked in higher ed, my job was to recruit first gen students to a private university. And so I was there for 7 years. I wore multiple hats at the university. And back in 2007, after getting married, I wanted to go back to education. And I knew that the turning point for many of our multilingual learners, right, is junior high, because that's where we start, kind of pushing students towards a college prep track, right, and the non-college prep track. And I wanted to do everything possible to be able to want to expose my students to innovative ways to learn and also to teach, right? And so I've been in junior high since 2007, and that is my passion. And I love junior high, and I love empowering educators throughout the state and throughout the nation on how to best work with emerging bilinguals, right? And specifically newcomers. And so back in 2016, this I do want to highlight because there aren't that many Google innovators around the world, right? And I'm one of them. And then when you factor in biliteracy, and when you factor in, you know, working with multilingual learners, there are very few of us in United States that are actually doing that. And then to be able to be, a newcomer advocate and teacher and a net tech expert per se, then that's a small niche, right? And so that's why I'm here. That's why I started the California Newcomer Network, because during the pandemic, right, when we shut down, many teachers reached out to me. It's like, Efrain, how are you doing distance learning with newcomers? Right. And that just really gave me the vision. You know what? This is a huge state issue. And I'm involved at the state level, just promoting newcomer advocacy. And if those of you that didn't realize, California doesn't really have an official definition of what a newcomer is. We have a federal definition. Many LEAs, school districts use that definition, and some districts are very progressive and they've defined what a newcomer is, right? But the state of California has no clear definition of what a newcomer is. So it brings some challenges for us, right? Some opportunities for us to step it up and define what a newcomer is, right? It's so that we can create systems within our school districts to be able to ensure that all students, as well as newcomers, have every single opportunity to have access and to have a great public education. So that's a little bit about my passion for technology, my passion for language acquisition, and ultimately, when it comes down to it, how can we be inclusive in our teaching, in our pedagogy, when we have students that are from different countries, right? And so that's a little bit about my passion for technology, my passion for language acquisition, and ultimately, when it comes down to it, how can we be inclusive in our teaching, in our pedagogy when we have students that are from different countries? or even from different neighborhoods, right? It's not just about countries. Culture is culture. Culture is what you define what you live in, right? Whether it's here United States or different pockets in LA or in the valley where I'm from, here in Central Cal, or if you're from a different country. We need to be culturally competent, right?
Mm.
To be able to access those assets from our students, to be able to leverage them, to be able to empower them to become, you know, proficient in their L1 or L2 or even sometimes L3, right?
Right.
And then, or to help our EOs become who they can become. So that's a little bit about, you know, this stuff. So
Thank you
questions, ask
so
away,
much.
you guys. Let's have a
You know,
informal
before we
combo.
get into our questions
Yeah.
interrogation section, just kidding. We wanted to give you a chance. We know we wanted you to share screen too. Is there something you wanted to share as well
Yeah, let
before
me
we get
let me
into it?
so if you take a look at this screen here, hopefully you can see it soon, right? This slide here makes a huge statement, right? So what's the statement that your front door to your classroom says, right? Is it inclusive, right? Are you looking at the data from your school district, from your school site? What languages are represented at your school site, right? And so you don't have to be an ELD teacher to be empathetic or to be inclusive. We are all language teachers, right? And I love my tribe, right? I love secondary teachers, but sometimes we know, like my mom says, we can be cabezudos, we can be
Mhm.
stubborn, we can be hard headed, because I went to school to become a content specialist. Yes, we did, but we also are language specialists as well because we're teaching the academic vernacular of our specialty, of our special subject, right? And so by making the statement, it says that one, I see you. Number two, you are welcome in my classroom. And just learning a few words like welcome, like chào mừng, right? And Vietnamese, right? It goes a long way, right? Or like in Zapoteco, Naimasingo, right? Those things make a huge difference, right? And just learning those words. So, yeah, so just a few slides I want to kind of go over, and we can talk about that. Like I said, our names are tied to identity, right? And again, I've been called many things in my life. Some have been great, some have not been great, right? But when it comes down to it, our names are tied to our identity. And so, what can we do? These are little things that we can do to connect, to engage with our students, right? And to teach our students to also be empathetic and to be linguistically proficient. I once did a net tech workshop up in the Silicon Valley, and I was fortunate enough, to have a CEO of a Fortune 500 company be there in my workshop. And after the workshop, he came up to me and said, "Thank you for sharing what you shared about our names, right?" And he said, "I created this company that basically empowers and teaches business people, CEOs, executives, to learn how to pronounce their clients' names. Because sometimes if you cannot pronounce your client's name, that deal is done.
Mhm.
Right.
So
Yes.
in the real world, you not pronouncing your client's name can mean that you're losing a multi-million or multi-billion dollar contract simply because you're not culturally competent or linguistically competent to learn those cultural nuances, linguistic nuances that are so important as we become future ready, individuals. So, yeah. So just some slides, we talked about the why already. We talked about we're all language teachers, right? And that we all need to come to the table with our expertise and actually come together to find a solution to a problem, right? As a junior high teacher, I always tell my students, hey, I don't want any problem makers in here. I want problem solvers. And if you are a problem maker, great. Let's find a problem. Let's find a solution to the problem. And so, again, as secondary teachers, I encourage you to come together to really, find a solution to the challenges that we come. Okay.
Efrain, when you share that about our name is our identity. I remember seeing you speak somewhere and you played the video of Facundo the Great. And I
Yeah.
was hoping you were going to play it right now because it's just so great.
Oh, can we play it still? We need to play it.
Would you be okay with us
It
playing
is.
it? Is
It
that
is. Hey, it's too often, I don't like to play it because sometimes, depending on the context, right, I can get in trouble. But if you guys want to play it, feel free to play it. But I think it's a great, powerful, funny video that really gets the message across on why we should, try to learn our students' names. Do you have it, Ricardo?
I do have it, and I am going to play it.
Let's do it. Let's do
Here
it.
We're
it
gonna
goes.
do it.
We are going to do it. Let me forward a little bit so we can start right. And credit to Story Corps. Let me forward so we here goes.
My name when I started kindergarten was Ramon. And by the time I was in the second grade, everybody was calling me Raymond. Out in the playground, in the classroom, Raymond, hey, Raymond, hey, Raymond. And trying to adjust to this, you know what I mean? And if there was a girl named Maria, her name became Mary. And Juanita became Jane. Till one day we got a new student by the name of Facundo Gonzalez. Facundo Gonzalez, man. When he came into school, we noticed they called it emergency administrative meeting. You could kind of hear him talking to the door. What are we going to do with this guy, man? You know what I mean? How are we going to change his name, And one teacher goes, well, you know what? Why don't we try to shorten the name a little bit? And they go, yeah, well, but how do you spell it? Facundo. Well, why don't we just spell it FAC? And one teacher goes, well, that means his name would be fuck. And the other teachers looked at it, no, that sounds too much like a dirty word. You can't be saying fuck. Where's your homework? Where's fuck at? You know what I mean? Well, that was a trip we always remembered going to elementary school because Facundo was the only guy who never got his name changed.
He never got his name changed. I love
Exactly.
that.
I love that video, but it makes a great point, right? That and thank you, Billy, for pointing out that sometimes even our own students have learned to change their names,
Yes.
only to make it easier for not for them, but for the other person, right? So we need to really remind our students of their identity. That's why even today, right? I have a student by the name of Maximiliano. That's a mouthful, right? But we can do it, right? Maximiliano. And he introduced himself as Max. Then I said, well, hold on, Maximiliano. How does your mom call you? And he hesitated. How does your mom call you? I asked him 2 times. He hesitated. Then I said, Maximiliano, is that how your mom calls you? And he smiled and he said, yes. And so right there, I took that opportunity to say, all right, class, let's break up this multisyllabic word and let's break it up into syllables so that we all can learn how to say Maximiliano. And guess what? Everyone said his name correctly. It took a while, but everyone did it. And when he heard his name being pronounced by his peers, and this is junior high, you know how junior hires are, right?
Oh.
He just radiated with joy to know that, wow, they can actually say my name. And then I said, but if you want them to call you Max, that is okay. But we will choose, I want to give him that choice. But in terms of getting the kids to learn how to pronounce his name, it was powerful. It was just powerful. Yeah, I wish you guys were there.
You're so right. I mean, I've been Ricky, Rick, Richard, never Ricardo, when I was in school, until eventually I had someone that told me, no, your name means who you are, right? Ricardo, that's who you are. So you're so right.
Yeah, and I want to make the point that sometimes, teachers will not, they don't mean to. It might
Right.
come from a
Yeah.
place of ignorance or a place of, they just don't relate, but they'll look at their classes list and they'll be like, why? Why does it look like that? Why is it spelled that way? Why is, who would have a name like that in this place? And I think you said something earlier. You said all of us need to be innovative empathizers. So I think that's the lesson we all have to take with us is, even though we don't relate and it's not in our culture, it is in theirs. So, instead of looking at it and saying, why, like, help them. That's such a powerful story. And yeah, I can just imagine how that student felt, especially in middle school.
Yeah, especially in middle school, they're not going to challenge you, right? Or it's like, okay, yes, my name's Ricky, but it takes someone to say no. Maybe amongst your friends is your name's Ricky, but your name is Ricardo,
Mhm.
right? And to be able to pronounce it says something, right? Even to the psychological level, right? It shares with them that you are seen. I see you, right? And we all want to be seen. But nowadays, with everything, with that some of us don't want to be seen, some of us don't want to be, spoken to us by Maximiliano, so we change our names to Max. So this, dichotomous world that we live in, especially if you're bicultural, right?
Mhm.
One foot here, and like, where am I? What's my identity? And so that's why it takes us to be aware of these challenges that many of our second language learners, emerging bilinguals, right, newcomers, they do live in multiple worlds. And how do we bridge these worlds, right? That's why I love technology. That's why when I saw Ricardo the first time at a CTA event, I said, Ricardo, and Teresa, I know you weren't there, but I remember you guys because I attended one of your EdTech workshops at Cabe,
Yes.
and I loved your guys' stories. I loved your
Thank you.
passion for, for using tech as a transformational tool, right? To be able to minimize this language divide that does exist in our classrooms. So great, great, great conversation, you guys.
Yes. And so we have lots of questions. We've kind of been weaving in and out and already answering things. But I think for me, the question here is really, what are the challenges? Because we hear about the benefits here in today's show, but what were the challenges of making a space for native languages in newcomer classrooms?
Well, the challenges, right? And
Yeah.
so the challenges really is do you have administrative support, right?
Mm.
Do you have a vision at the top to promote multiliteracy, to promote biliteracy? Do you have pathways, right, from primary to secondary, right, or primary, uh, intermediate, and secondary, right? Do you have pathways to celebrate multiliteracy, right? And what does that look like? So you're creating this culture within your districts of promoting multiliteracy, right? Now, what happens when you don't have these systems in place? That's where the challenge comes, right? And so hopefully, you have, administrative support at your local school where you've done your homework, you've done your research, and you realize that in order for our multilingual learners to increase, right, in proficiency on the LPAC, right, several things have to happen, right? And so you need to know your data story to all of your emergent bilinguals, right? But really, the challenge is like, what happens when you don't speak Arabic, when you don't speak Punjabi, when you don't speak their language? That's why I said sometimes I've had up to 8 different languages represented in my classroom. And so, how do I value all of these languages within my classroom? So, how do you do it? It's simply, you don't need to be an expert, right? As educators of the 21st century, right? We are no longer experts. We are now facilitators of knowledge, facilitators of team building, right? And so facilitators of knowledge, right? And so what we can do is, hey, learn a few phrases in their home language, right? Like good job, like good, do it again, etc. But to be able just to give a little bit of space for them to be able to practice their home language. And how I do it is that when I don't understand the language, I listen for the fluidity. I listen for the pausing. And if they pause and it's fluid, then most likely it's what? Right on. But if they're struggling in their primary language, heritage language, then I just have them do it over again. Practice it. Practice it. Like I said in the video, if you can't say it in your heritage language, you're going to have a difficult time saying it in your secondary and tertiary language, right? So practice. And a good way for for academic success with our emerging bilinguals is they have to use the language, practice, 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 and make mistakes. And that's okay. Make mistakes. As teachers, we need to model, that academic vernacular, whether it's in science, math, even PE. Yes, PE teachers, right? And
Mhm.
obviously, if you're an elementary teacher, you're already doing it. That's all you do all day. You're doing integrated ELD all day, right? So yeah. So here on the screen, if you can put it up, Ricardo, I think it's also important to know that don't be so hard on yourself, right? As language teachers, know that Dr. Krashen has I put this graphic together so visually you kind of see the progression of language acquisition, and guess what? It takes up to 6 years, according to the state, right?
Wow.
6 years to actually be proficient. Should take them 6 years. But what happens if they have limited or interrupted formal education? Then that's going to take much
Mm,
longer. Usually, you want to
wow.
factor plus 2 to 3 years, right? So that means 9 years or even 8 years, depending on their proficiency in their primary language, right? But this gives you a good glimpse of what are they able to do, and this is where you leverage professional learning. And so how do you give them a linguistic appropriate worksheet that they're able to do at their linguistic level, right?
Mhm.
And that's a challenge. And so, how do we do that with newcomers? How do we do that with a newcomer that is not proficient in their primary language? That's a whole other workshop. That's a whole other topic. But that these are conversations we need to be having because all students need access to rigor and access to opportunity. And it is our responsibility as educators with ensuring that we have the tools from our district administrators to be able to help our students at their linguistically appropriate level.
So hearing that, I'm at the edge of my seat going, how? Just tell me how do I do that? Tell me how can I go back to my classroom and do
Right?
that for my
Yeah.
students?
So really simple. You can actually take a look at the ELD ELA framework and take a look at what they are able to do, right, at their level. So that's why this slide is so important, right? So if you have a newcomer, and typically they're going to be in the pre-production stage 1, which typically it can last anywhere from 0 to 6 months. They might be in the silent period, but silent doesn't mean that we just not talk to them, not engage them, right? It can be simple things as hello, welcome, how are you, little phrases, right? It could be providing vocabulary in their primary language, heritage language, right? And then also leveraging, this is where you guys do a great job, leveraging the technology to minimize the language divide so that you are able to, you know, uh, empower them with two languages. Obviously, English is the target, providing sentence frames, sentence structures, and, all of that stuff. And so, one, it requires us to really understand and the ELA ELD framework and what they are able to do at each of the levels. That's what's challenging. That's where we bring in professional, facilitators of the ELA ELD framework to help us. Hey, here's a perfect scenario. Let's say I have a newcomer who is, and let me actually go really back. Let me go back here. This is important right here, right? So it's a newcomer who is a SLIFE student, a SLIFE newcomer. A SLIFE newcomer is a student that has limited or interrupted formal education. So it's going to take them anywhere from 2 to 3 extra years, right, to learn the language because they're not proficient in their primary language. So that's a challenge in itself. So, do you have an
Mhm.
ELD team, a linguistic team that meets to discuss an effective plan to create for this SLIFE newcomer? It's a challenge. It really is. And so, um, but that's why I encourage all of you, if you work with newcomers, that's why you got to join the California Newcomer Network because we're a statewide um, professional network that really is here committed to empowering, training, equipping, engaging teachers of newcomers. And look out for our upcoming webinars that are coming this year. And we are listed as a resource under the California Department of Education. So that's a huge, huge win for us. So, yeah.
That's a great plug because we're getting messages on our phones and on the side from people saying, how can I learn more about this? How can I learn more?" And they're
Yeah,
eager
yeah.
to know more.
You
And
know,
so,
Teresa,
yeah.
and the question that you posed, right? You know, it's we can't. I wish we had more time, but we can't really go into the nuts and bolts on how to do it here. But there are resources out there. I'm a resource, you know, and I'm sure you have experts within your own school district that can do that. That can take a look at the expectations, right? The Common Core standards, and then what does that look like for a newcomer, for a level 1 student, right? What does it look like for a SLIFE newcomer, right? Which is different from a regular newcomer. Typically, I have there's two terms I use. It's a SLIFE. You know what that is, right? If you know what it is, type it in the chat. All right. If you don't know what it is, here it is. A student with limited or interrupted formal education. And what is a safe newcomer? A student with ample formal education. Those students are typically in your newcomer program maybe for 6 months or a year, and then they're out because they're rich in their language, right, in their primary language, and maybe they've studied English in their home country, and guess what, they get A's and they do really well, so they're going to transition right away, right? But it's these life newcomers that's the real challenge, right? So we need to come together as a team to investigate their data story to find out, okay, what's going on, right? As a matter of fact, let me show you this. This happened today. I have to show you this, okay? Because you know I'm a teacher, and this happened today. So can you see my screen? Awesome.
Yes.
Check this out. So I do one of these every day, and this is one question I post today, and they have to use post-its, right? I'm a big person of empathetic interviews, right? And so what can I do to help you, right? And either listening, speaking, reading, writing. So this student, and I'm sorry it's kind of not big, but I noticed that one of my newcomers could not read.
Wow.
And I said, okay, let me do a quick assessment. So I did 1, 2, 3. And so I orally I gave him an assessment in Spanish, and I had him write Hoy es viernes. So I wanted him to write that sentence. And look what he wrote. I don't know if we can zoom in, Ricardo.
Yes.
So phonetically, look at that. So this tells me a lot. So he doesn't have phonemic awareness in Spanish. And look what he's doing, right? Hoy, oi. And there's no spaces in between these words, right? This is a 7th grader, right?
Wow.
And so I asked him, okay, right, me gusta comer tacos. He wrote me tacos, right? So thank you for putting that, Ricardo. So that I did a quick assessment today. Now I know, without a shadow of a doubt, that he struggles in reading and writing, right? And also in math, because I did a quick math assessment. So here's a perfect example of a newcomer who is a SLIFE student who cannot read and write in his primary language, in his heritage language. And so he's very charismatic. He's very flamboyant. He doesn't like being in the seat. He walks around and he's very, very, he's an extrovert student, right? But he's compensating for something that is challenging for him. So my job as an educator is to know his data story, to be able to help them and prescribe the best plan of attack to ensure that, one, I build his heritage language skills, but two, at the same time, teach him English. And it is a challenge. I'm not going to lie about that. But guess what? The more tools you have on your tool belt, the better advocate teacher you can be. Right. So thank you.
Thank you for sharing that. Yeah, and so you kind of mentioned technology a little bit in there, and this is more of a question for Ricardo and I because we're all about the tech too. And I loved how you assess them. Just paper, just ask something quick, and you were able to, informally get that information that you needed really quickly. What are some technologies that you have used with your students or for your students? Um, how do you use technology to help your students learn English and other subjects? I guess it seems like such a, surface level question at this point after having this conversation with you. So we're going to let you just answer that in any way that you want to.
Yeah. So, when it comes down to it, Teresa, it's like technology is so ever changing, right?
Right.
And so that's why I said it's difficult to be an expert of tech because there's so much tech that's out there. And now with AI coming, right? And it's already here. How does that factor in language acquisition, right? Which is a topic that I'm looking at closely and conversing with other people. But there's simple things that we can do as educators and leveraging the technology, right? So I'm going to share my screen here, right? And I'm going to show you something that we can do, right? So let me go into slideshow. This is how you can leverage Google Slides. This is how where you can leverage extensions like uh, read and write extension, which is free for educators. This is where you can leverage audio recording on certain websites
Yes.
where you can record your audio for free. I use the Noun project for icons. That's technology, using icons as a way to be able to communicate, right? Or images. I'm utilizing Flipgrid as a way for them to record themselves speaking. So I'm using YouTube, which is technology, where I teach them how to actually go into the YouTube video, right, and learn more about the parts of speech, leveraging the closed captions, leveraging the translation of the closed captions. So look, everything that's going on in the slide deck for building vocabulary with all students, regardless if they're English learners or not, we need to build their academic prowess, right? We need to build their vocabulary, right? That is the one of the most foundational skills of language development that we need to do in order to help them have access to rigorous text, right? So anything that you see in green here, that is what the students are doing, right? So I give them the word hope, right? And the green has to do with syllables, right? How many syllables is this word? Obviously, hope is what? One syllable, right? Boom, one. Number two, they have to write the translation of hope. They look it up. I don't use Google Translate. I use Word Reference, right? It's an online multilingual dictionary, right? So I have them write it out or copy it and paste it in there. Number two, I give them the definition of what I want. So I give them the specific, simple academic definition of what I want them to learn, right? Boom, there it is. And look what I use. I use read and write text and bring in these icons. Boom. So they have a visual definition of the actual definition. And then I record myself. I record myself, and sometimes we don't like to hear our own selves, right? But it's they hear us all the time. So I provide them an audio of me reading the definition, right? And then this is where they get to create. I'm a big advocate of creativity, right?
Yes.
And language arts. How can we get them to create a sentence? How can we get them to create an on the surface question, right? That begins with when, where, who, and where, right? Those four W's, right? And have them construct an on the surface question, right? And then an inferential question that begins with how, why, should, could, would, right? And then they also have to write it in their heritage language. Again, practicing this biliteracy and multiliteracy. And it's non negotiable. They have to, right? And so, especially if they're a newcomer, right? Now, with my levels threes and fours, I encourage them, but it's not expected, right? Unless they're going for a biliteracy skill or a seal, right? And so then, yeah, this is something that you can definitely use in your classroom. Just leveraging all of the simple these ed tech tools to be able to give them access
Yeah,
to content.
we had a great video where you actually have this student, right, using technology to excel. I know we're running out of time and I won't be able to play it. So maybe I'll play like 20 seconds, Teresa, and I'll put the link for people to see it. Is that okay? because I thought it was great.
Amal hasn't been here yet, 2 years.
Oh, sorry, I always do that. My fault.
And so, what she has accomplished in the short amount of time that she's been here has been great. Recording in 3, 2, 1, begin. So, this class is called a newcomers class. So, typically, any student that has been in the country 3 years or less is placed in this class. And the goal of this class is to really get them prepared to be able to be successful in school by acquiring their second or even third language.
If she doesn't understand the question, he'll have someone translate in Arabic, and he pushes her to speak English as often as possible.
As a Google certified innovator, always seeking innovative ways to use technology to bridge the language divide. Having them collaborate in their own primary language is really important, but also when I don't speak their language, I will utilize certain apps to kind of bridge that language divide and also learn, a few phrases and
And I'll stop at there, but I love how she's doing computer science right while learning English. And I'll put that link up right now.
Yeah, and thank you, Efrain, for sharing. Because as a teacher, I looked at what you shared and I said I could do that. This kind of seems like such a big thing for some teachers, like a little overwhelming, and they don't know, what they can take back. But what you shared was, I could do that. I could do parts of that tomorrow. I could start some of that, and kind of grow my knowledge, not just in technology, just in, all ways how we can help these students. So, so thank you. I love that.
Oh,
Okay,
you're
so
welcome. Yeah,
this
and kind of
question,
in closing too, Teresa, Ricardo attended one of the sessions I presented at, and he actually
yeah.
has my entire slide deck. So teachers, so if you want some of the resources, Ricardo will
I
definitely
have
share
it
that
all.
out with you guys. So he has it all, and there's tons and tons of resources for you guys that are
That
available
is a
free of charge.
gift. That is
Yeah.
a gift to everybody, because there are these experts that share all over. But Efrain, thank you so much for
Thank
allowing us,
you.
because our teachers, when we told them you were coming, already researched you and they were excited to learn more. But we weren't sure, like, how much can we share? But so thank you for giving us the blessing to share that. But I know usually this is around the time we end, but Efrain, we don't want you to go yet. If you could spare us just a few more minutes with us, we promise we'll
Hey,
wrap it up really quick.
I'm free for another 30 minutes. So
All right,
this
here we
is
go.
exciting.
There, he mentioned this about hopefully we'll have him back another time, but the whole idea of worksheets and that slide that you have, it's an inside joke, but it's just hilarious. Hopefully we'll get it, because if you get the presentation, you're gonna get it. It's hilarious.
Well, now you have to tell us, because the audience is like, what are they talking about right
He'll
now?
put it in there somehow. He'll put it in there somehow.
I got it. All right. But before we get to this question, Efrain, is there a special project or something that you're especially proud of that you want to make sure we share? I know we have shared a little bit earlier. Is there anything else you would like to talk about that you want to share and make sure we're aware of and make sure we make ourselves a part of?
Yeah, definitely. Please join the California Newcomer Network. It is something that is grassroots, initiated, and so our goal and vision is to really empower and equip educators throughout the state of California that do work with newcomers, and so we are bringing the the experts at the state level, at the national level, to empower educators. So please get connected. Follow me on Twitter. I love to post stuff on edtech and also anything has to do with language acquisition. And so definitely here to be of service. And so hopefully we can continue this conversation, and maybe one of these days I might even make a little trip down there to your school district to see the great things that you guys are doing there, because I truly, truly believe that that we learn best by observing each other, right? And that takes some vulnerability, right? And so and after 28 years or 27 years of teaching, one of the things I've learned is that we have great teachers in our school districts, right? Would you agree? Right, Billy?
Yes.
And so I'm picking Billy because
Brian is
Billy's
here too.
been really proactive, and I love that, Billy. But every school district, we have some great innovators, right? And I think we can all learn if we go in with that mindset. Doesn't matter. I'm been teaching 27, 28 years. I know it all, right? No, it's like I'm still invigorated by observing you, young teachers, older teachers, because if I go in with the mindset, I'm going to learn one thing. And if I go in like that, guess what? I'm going to learn multiple things. And because I've opened up my life, my heart, my vulnerability, right? That has allowed me to become who I am today. So, what I'm saying with this, Ricardo and Teresa, and everyone that's watching me and watching us here, is that mi clase es tu clase. My class is your class. So, if you ever decide to say, you know what, I want to make a trip up to Central California, raising capital of the world, you are more than likely, or you are more than welcome to come and actually see it in person. Because I can talk about it, right? I can show you nice pictures, but there's nothing more powerful than to actually see it in person and see it in action, right? And sometimes that's all it takes. So, this past year, I think I've had like 9 school districts come and observe, all the way from Sacramento Unified School District to, to Salinas Unified, and and other local school districts, and that inspires them. It gives them hope of the possibilities, what can be, right? And sometimes that's what it takes to inspire, right? And that's my goal. My mission in life is to encourage and to inspire and to learn from each other, and to continue to grow hashtag better together.
Wow. I feel like we have more questions, but I just
Hey, I'm free until 6:30. So if you guys want to
Efrain,
continue, if you guys have questions, Phil, but I do want to be sensitive to your guys' time because you are also
yes.
parents. So I appreciate you.
If your goal was to inspire, I will tell you that I myself am so inspired. As an educator, and as a human being, as someone who went through the system and was nearly told to forget who I am, and finally now at this age trying to go back and trying to remember and empower myself to be who I am, and wanting to do that for my students who are going through the system right now. So thank you for that, for who you are, for what you do for us as educators and for our students as well. Any last party, if you had one piece of advice to give to someone who's just new to this whole conversation, what would it be?
Well, two things. I want to
All right.
leave you both a message, and the second one to answer your question is like, for all of you educators that are out there, you're not alone, right? There's some that are seasoned and some that are brand new. Maybe this is your first year teaching. Know that you are not alone, right? And so please connect with other colleagues that you feel um, safe with, to be able to be vulnerable, right? And for those of you that are seasoned, right, I challenge you to become vulnerable, to be able to reach out to that first year, second year, even third year teacher, or even the first 5 years, right? The first 5 years are most important years of a young teacher's life, right? But reach out to them, because you know how you felt that first year, right? And make yourself available and do everything that you can to encourage, to care for, and to remind them that they are great teachers and they've chosen a great profession, right? And I love being a public educator. I'm a huge advocate for public education, and I think uh, you guys are in a district where you're very well supported. And this is my transition to you, Teresa and Ricardo. I am your fan, number one fan, because the session that I attended and saw the great things you guys are doing in your district, I was blown away. It invigorated me because you guys are young teachers, and the stuff that you're doing, the conversations you are having about AI and education, and all the tools that you're equipping your teachers, that is so awesome to see that there are other educators that are also passionate, that are innovative, and great job, you guys. So I appreciate all of you. Thank you so much.
Ricardo, I'm going to let you speak because I always take it. Oh, I say so much. I know you have a lot to say. I could see it in your
No,
face.
I just wanted to say, from the bottom of my heart to Efrain, thank you. because
Yeah.
happened to see you as the main speaker at this conference, and you recognized me, and you came to me actually before I even made it to you, and I only asked once, and he says, yes, I'll be happy to be there for you guys. And it's just been so amazing to have you here and have our teachers listen to you and learn so much along with you. So definitely we love you. We love you.
Thank you.
We love you. Thank you so much. And thank you to all the teachers who are watching now and who will be watching later on demand. Thank you, everyone, for all you do. Have a great year, and we will see you again. Bye, everyone.
Bye-bye.